Hey everyone, welcome to episode 31 of the Adventuring for Mere Mortals podcast. I'm Kyle, joined as always by co-host Trevor, and this month we have some repeat offenders, friends, that have already been on the show, and that is Kalman, the ghost mule Tinka, and Connor. And we're just gonna name this episode Kalman and Connor's Excellent Adventure, and I'll let Trev get into what that actually means. Trev, take it away.
So, hey guys, how's it going tonight?
Good, how are you?
Yeah.
Doing great. And special person back on the show, Kalman Tinka's back with us, and he brought a friend. His friend is Connor Boss.
So, also known as Hot Pants.
Oh, yeah, also known as Hot Pants. And Kalman's trail name is Ghost Mule. So, if you prefer trail names, you could use those. But I was chatting back and forth, and he had, I guess I should call it an announcement or something along those lines that we thought was a cool thing to have an episode about. So we'll get to that a little bit later in the episode. I won't spoil it for right now. But I think we should start with our normal little catch up. So I'll give a little hint. Kyle has some big news. So take it away, Kyle.
Well, we've actually recorded relatively quickly since the last episode turnaround, which has been getting a lot of positive feedback. But in that time, we've had the holidays and birthdays, so we've been doing that thing. But the most notable thing was Aaron and I are now engaged. So the Sunday following Thanksgiving, we went and picked out a Christmas tree, and as we were putting the ornaments on the tree, she got us an ornament last year that was, of all the weird things I found on the internet, you're by far my favorite. And so put the ring on there and completely fried her brain. She stared at the ring, she stared at the ornament, she stared at me for about 15, 20 seconds, and then just blurted out, yeah. So yay. I was getting a little nervous. But her boss came to my rescue. Whenever she was telling the story, she said that it was like, I don't know, it was like 10, 15 seconds, of silence. And he apparently started a timer on his phone and then just stared at her for 10, 15 minutes. And she goes, okay, maybe that was a long time. But
that's awesome.
Yep. And then so after the engagement, Camper Van 2.0 is up and running.
Hopefully this one has a better life than the last one.
Yeah. Hopefully it's makes it more than one trip. But we're taking it up this weekend to Vermont for the ski season kickoff with Explore and More. So we had John on the podcast a while back, and he's the one organizing the trip. So as soon as I get back from Pittsburgh, we're hopping in the vehicle and driving up north. So what about you, Trev? Anything as exciting as an engagement?
No. Thanksgiving stuff, like we had the last couple of weeks and Christmas coming up, but yeah, it's just winter's here, and I'm in very flat central Illinois. Not a whole lot of winter activities that go on here. I guess maybe every once in a while there's some stuff, but yeah, it's been pretty cold. So I've been inside the house, and as we talked about last year, it's like my season that I fix all the annoying things in my house because I'm kind of cooped up in my house. So that is in full swing. Every time I think I'm going to run out of stuff to fix, and I always find more things. So that's ongoing and probably will be forever ongoing. But yeah, other than that, not a lot going on. chasing kids, normal stuff. Work's actually slowed down a little bit now, so that's actually nice. But on to our guest. Connor, we'll go with you first. What have you been up to, man?
Oh, not much. As by trade, I do real estate appraisal, and that's been super busy lately. And then I guess I say not much, and then I start thinking it's been very busy lately. My fiance and I just got back from a trip down to Park City in Salt Lake. Went down there to see a concert, and if there was decent snow, I snowboard and she skis, so we might have given that a try. But there's like no snow at all down there. Otherwise, just kind of traveling. Montana is nice this time of year, light on snow. So we've got a cabin up in some mountains, been up there a couple times, just kind of biding our time until the snow rolls around, do some snowmobiling and skiing and sledding and all that fun stuff. So, but yeah.
Sweet. What about you, Kalman?
I'm much less exciting than all of you. I'm not really doing anything. The part of Montana that I'm in is kind of like we're in that transitional period where we can't really go out hiking or do anything like that because the mountains are covered in snow, but they don't have enough snow quite yet to do winter stuff. So it's like you can look at it and go, that's nice, but you really can't do much. Other than that, since I'm the one guy here that doesn't have a big boy job, I just still work in retail. So, just holiday season retail funness. I started working at a garden center recently, and so I've been spending my weekends selling Christmas trees. So that's a unique experience. But yeah, other than that, I'm just basically been obsessed with this little project, much to Connor's chagrin, because he's the guy that got sucked into it and has to listen to me drone on and on about it. So
Gets to listen.
He's nicer than I am.
Well, I'm excited to hear about it. It looks daunting. I'll just leave it at that. Foreshadowing.
You are not incorrect, sir.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, we mentioned last month in last month's episode that Kyle and I had some homework, and I actually did my homework. So if you haven't listened to it, we were talking about accessibility in the outdoors with a colleague of Kyle's. And after the episode came out, one of our previous guests, Tim Kottman, who was on episode, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was about bow fishing. He actually reached out and was like, this episode was great. You were talking about all-terrain type wheelchairs. And it turns out his girlfriend's son has multiple sclerosis. So he'd actually done a lot of research. So he did a lot of the homework for me, to be honest. But with our guest, Lee, he was talking about availability of these action chairs in Pennsylvania. But it turns out there are other states and other state parks that actually have them as well. And the ones Kottman was aware of was that the Georgia and Minnesota Department of Natural Resources actually have some available for use in their states. And I will put links to where you can check that out in the show notes. But he kind of went a little bit even further, and there is an all-terrain wheelchair that is actually made in the U.S., made in Nebraska where he lives, and from a company called Rocket Mobility. And it's kind of neat that in 2003, it was named the coolest thing that was made in the state of Nebraska. I don't know who runs that award, but it did win that award, and it's pretty cool.
That's a great award name.
2003 or 2023?
2023. Thank you for correcting me. The other part of our homework, we were trying to think of some outdoor accessibility groups, and I did a little Googling on myself, and I found one, and I will be reaching out to them to see if I can get someone from their organization on the podcast to talk about the issues that they deal with. But they're rather big, so we'll see how it goes. But the group is Disabled Hikers. It's www.disabledhikers.com. They're an outdoor accessibility advocacy group. I believe they're centered in Washington State. So yeah, they seemed really neat. They've got a great website that really kind of talks about their mission, their kind of programs that they're doing. So I'll also put their link in the show notes, so people that are interested can have a look at that. Right. I think that's it for homework. So we're going to start getting into our main topic. And before y'all make your announcement, I think we should start with one question. We asked Kalman this in his episode earlier this year, but Connor, how were you introduced to the outdoors?
It's tough to define an exact moment. I suppose I was introduced to it most of my life. It makes it a little easier living in Montana, where like everywhere you go has some form of outdoors. My earliest memory of doing anything really outdoors was when I was really young, fishing off a dock up at Flathead Lake in northwestern Montana. But my family has never been quite as into it as I was, so I just kind of sought things out, picked up a side retail job, stuff like that, to try and figure it out on my own. But yeah, I have a hard time defining a moment like how I was introduced. Passions for it. Like I've always loved backpacking, hunting, fishing. If you can do something outdoors, I enjoy doing it. So
nice. So, lifetime
I think that's
enjoyment.
the best answer I can give.
No, that's good. All right. Now that we got that knocked out, I think I will let you guys make your announcement in whichever way you feel
I'll
the
let,
way is the
I'll
way
let
to do
Kalman do all the talking. He's the mastermind. I'm just his crony along for the ride.
Maybe the evil genius. I'm not sure. Self-torture. So we basically so a little bit of backstory on this. I don't know if I guess I'll say what it is. So I created a route that we are planning on doing in July of 2025. And that route is 154 miles long. And to the best of our knowledge, it has not been attempted in this capacity yet. And it basically compromises a bunch of existing trails in the Absaroka-Beartooth wilderness, which is near where we live. And it's daunting. It's 10 peaks or 10 passes along the entire route, and the total elevation gain and loss for this particular route is 32,000 feet of elevation gain and loss. So the backstory of this and how this came about was Connor and myself, we've been on several trips before together. In fact, the trip that we went on together, we actually got our trail names on the same day. Two very different experiences. My trail name, of course, it says Ghost Mule. His trail name is Hot Pants. And funny stories involved with that. But those were given to us by the third member of our little trail pack, which is, I think I talked about him on the last episode. His trail name is Phantom, and he's kind of our, trail mentor, if you will. And he has hiked the Appalachian Trail as well as the Pacific Crest Trail, both from start to finish. And so he has a background as a through hiker. And so all the stories that we would get to hear, which were plentiful, Connor can attest to that, were mostly about through hiking. And the interesting side effect of that is that it took me, who's a pretty, staunch, weekend adventurer, and kind of lit the fire of wanting to do a through hike on my own. And unfortunately, I'm in a position in life where I'm probably not going to be able to peel away for 6 months to do the Pacific Crest Trail or something like that. And being that I worked at an outdoor retail store and we're not always very busy, one of the things that we typically do when we're not busy is we look at maps. And so one day I pulled out the Absaroka-Beartooth Wilderness map and I looked at it and I said, I wonder if I could create my own through hike of the AB Wilderness. And so I began playing a very intricate game of connect the dots. And in this case, I guess it would be connect the trails. And I started working backwards from one of the trail towns that we frequent, Red Lodge. And after a while, I had created a route, and that route starts just outside of Livingston, Montana, and it transverses across the Absaroka range and then into the Beartooth range, which are actually two distinctly different ranges, not just by name, but by geography as well. And then it goes into Cook City, about the halfway point, and then it ends again in Red Lodge. And as I said, it's 154 miles, give or take, and a whole lot of up and down. And I cooked up this crazy idea in my, demented head, and I showed it to Connor, and he looked at it, and about 10 seconds later, he was like, I'm in. And so we have been planning this escapade, ever since then. It's been a little bit delayed because we did have a big flooding event here a couple years back that damaged several sections of the trail. But with one exception, that's been fixed. And so we are ready to just start this insanity.
I'm looking at the elevation profile now. I brought it up while you were talking. It's excessive, man. It's like you go straight up, basically straight back down, straight up, straight back down, just in and out of each drainage.
Yeah, it also is, it's funny because the original route is slightly different because I used all existing trails with a little bit of road walk. And there's one section that we thought was kind of an exposed area and probably wasn't going to be a lot of fun. And Connor suggested we do a connector route, which is a non-established trail. And it goes into another area and has a really beautiful view. And it added another pass, which made it an even 10. Because gluttons for punishment, right?
Yeah, of
but
course.
It's interesting enough. It's definitely a leap forward. Before this, I think either of us, the longest we had done has been a week. We did the Solitude Loop Trail together, and that was we did that in 6 days. And depending on what guidebook you look at, it's between 50 and 60 miles. And it was a good one, but this is definitely going to be a leap. We're going to do this and hoping to do it in 12 days. We are, it's very interesting. I think, especially right now in the backpacking community, and especially with social media, it seems like you have to be doing, a 6-month journey in 2,000 some miles in order to be. But I don't think people really realize just how big of a jump forward it can be to go from, doing 3-4 days to doing an extended 12, day trip, where we're going to be basically probably doing some sort of a high point every single day. And so, it's funny. I created this route, and the last person I told it to is like, it's really not that big of a deal, but it kind of is, especially for mere mortals like us. And it is a little bit daunting. I've already started my conditioning for it, and we've got like 6 months or so to go. But it's not going to be probably too bad. I have done almost the entirety of the second half of this trail already in other trips, just not together. So I know I physically can do it. But yeah, it is going to be a slog.
Yeah, you were saying it is kind of a big jump from 3-4 days to something like this, and not just the physical part of it, because when you get that long, there's more like logistics you have to deal with, like supply points. So I guess how are you going to handle? I'll go with just the supply type of points and stuff like that, because in theory you could carry 12 days of food, but it doesn't sound fun.
Sure. Well, there are 3 major logistical, I guess, concerns right now that we have with this trip, that we're going to be meeting this week, even to start hammering some of those out. The first one, of course, being the resupplies. And we originally planned to do just one in Cook City, because we know we can do a week's worth of food, but we had the opportunity to add some others, and we quickly realized that as big a leap as this is going to be for us, one resupply, carrying a week's worth of food is not fun. It's especially with bear precautions and everything else. So we did manage to do 3 resupplies. The first one will be somewhere around in the Boulder area. Connor's uncle has a cabin up in that area, and he has graciously volunteered to schlep us our first round of food resupply. So we just have to make sure that we get in that area on a weekend. So that kind of factors into the planning a little bit. And then the second one we're actually going to be doing in Cook City. And this one kind of ties in with our second logistical issue, which is there's no tent camping in the Cook City area due to an unfortunate grizzly bear attack that was fatal in a campsite just outside of town. And so you can't camp in those areas without a hard-sided, basically RV. And we also kind of decided that after about 100 miles in a week on the trail, we are desperately going to want some decent food, a nice bed, and a shower. So we are actually going to be getting a hotel room. And I have actually done this before in Cook City once before, where we hiked in, stayed at the hotel, and then headed out the next day. And the hotel we stayed at before allowed us to mail ourselves a resupply. So we basically have to get into Cook City on the day of our reservation because it's right outside of Yellowstone in July, and you can't just walk up and get a hotel room. Lots of tourists try. They do not succeed. But so we have to have a reservation. So we have to make that. So we're going to have that looming over our heads probably the entire first half of the trip. But once we get there, we'll be able to do a resupply. And then the third resupply actually also ties into our third logistical challenge right now. And the third one we are going to do at the end of a very popular path here called the Beaten Path. And it is one of the trails that was heavily damaged during that flooding. In fact, there is a bridge out on that is supposed to be fixed sometime during the 2025 summer. We're hoping it's getting moved up in time frame because unfortunately last summer, they had a fatality there. A young man tried to cross, and this crossing is a nightmare anytime before about halfway through August, just with all the water. And he unfortunately slipped, and they recovered his body about a week and a half later. So, hopefully that is going to, the bridge will be put in. However, if that bridge is not put in, this sounds like the most MacGyvered part of the trail. The guy who's bringing our resupply to the end of that trail is going to hike up to that particular crossing with a pack raft and is going to pack raft us to cross the lake.
Nice.
And part of me is like, I really hope that bridge is done because it'll be the safest way possible. And the other part of me is, but man, is it going to be cool to include pack rafting on this? So maybe, it could be cool if it's not there, as long as we all successfully do it. So yes, like I say, long story short, we're doing 3 resupplies. So I think at the longest we'll have a food carry of about 4 days. And I think that's going to be from Boulder to Cook City. So the longest food carry is going to be right before we regain a little bit of sanity and civilization.
So you mentioned bears at least a couple times in that explanation. I imagine you have some bear preparation, bear mitigation. What methodologies do you think y'all will be using?
Well, I think it's going to be one of those, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Fortunately, both of us have basically spent the last, Connor grew up in grizzly country, and I spent the last 10 years out here. And so we're pretty used to, the bear precautions, but we definitely will be carrying bear canisters. So we've kind of collectively given up on bear bagging for 2 reasons. One, bears are becoming more and more used to getting into them. It's basically a food-filled pinata to them at this point, and so many people don't hang them well enough that people that they've definitely gotten into it. And so it's just more of a safety margin. And then the other thing we found is at the end of the day, when we get into camp, it's a lot easier just to screw the lid on that thing and go cram it into a couple of rocks than it is to try to throw a bear line. And so there's a lazy factor in there as well.
One downside with that, and part of why we're doing as many resupplies as we are, is it's tougher to fit more food in there. And as Kalman will tell you, I'm a big fan of very, very hearty and hefty food items. I usually end up bringing like a bagel sandwich or two and all sorts of non-small, non-traditional, long-range backpacking meals. So a bear keg is nice to have for that, but the biggest downside is you can only carry so much food.
He
You're like
brings
Trev.
us. What's that?
Yeah, don't bring me. I'm with you. I like big meals, really big meals.
No,
I am fairly convinced that Connor does that just to mess with me. Just to see the look of forlorn on my face as I'm eating my ramen or dehydrated fruit.
the jealous look I get fuels me for the next day usually.
Hey, there's one upside to the bear canisters. There's a seat.
Yes,
You
but
can sit on those.
we also bring seats. Usually I end up using it as a footrest.
Hey, there you go. Luxuries.
Mm-hmm.
I am contemplating not bringing my seat, but every time I think about it, I'm like, yeah, the weight savings would be awesome, but I'm going to be out there for 12 days. I do not want to be sitting in the dirt for 12 freaking days.
Yeah.
So I'm torn on that one.
I'm torn on whether I want to bring my fly rod and fishing kit. That ends up being extra weight, and half the time when you get into a spot, you're so tired that you don't want to take the time to put a fly rod together and get out and fish. So,
or you're 2 days in and find out you forgot your reel.
Yeah, that only happens once. You learn from that mistake, or so I'm told.
No repeat. On our last backpacking trip on the old loggers path, one of the guys in the group carried a fly rod and actually went and fished one of the streams that we camped by. Mm-hmm. So he came back empty-handed, but everyone was. Are you sure you want to bring that?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm leaning more towards taking it because I think it'll be cool to look back and tell people, yeah, I fished almost every lake from Livingston to Red Lodge. So,
yeah,
I think one of the biggest pitfalls, though, when you're planning a trip like this, is that everything looks a lot easier on the map, and then you actually get out there and do it. I remember when we were doing Sawtooth loop, we were like, you know what, we're gonna hit this, and we'll the very last day we'll summit one of these peaks. And a week in, we were like, no, we're not doing it no more. So collectively, we all decided, but Connor was the one that was really big on it. And so we were both relieved when he said, yeah, I don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
But so, yeah. And then, of course, the other, precautions are carrying bear spray. Probably the biggest difference in my kit is I recently had the opportunity to demo a prototype for a product that Chicken Tramper Gear just launched, which was a shoulder strap bear spray holder that is the most comfortable, out of the way. You wouldn't think it's out of the way, but it is carrier that I've ever used. So that's going to be a lot of fun to use that because I won't have to worry about pulling my pants up all the time while my pack's actively pushing my bear spray down. But we carry bear spray all day, every trip. So I think that's just going to be kind of common. And then just the fact that we're doing it together, it's pretty rare, even in grizzly country, almost incredibly rare for attacks to happen on groups of more than one people. Usually, if there's more, if they are just with other people, they're usually separated. And fortunately, I like to think that we have a very easily matched pace, but the reality is I'm just slow, and Connor's a lot nicer than I am, and so he just keeps up with me because I'm slow. I got short legs. So
my fiance would also kill me if I went ahead by myself. She likes the fact that I'm with someone who is a former paramedic. That's a selling point for me being able to go on trips like this. So
he's just gonna push me down and run.
Yeah.
Hey, wait.
That is one methodology. You don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun your hiking partner.
Just don't have to be the slowest person.
Yep. But so for our listeners that aren't familiar or like in bear country, because out east, we have black bears and bear canisters. They're filtering in over here. Folks use those. But the bear spray itself is basically a weaponized version of mace. And it has a longer range. Depending on the cans, it's 30 to 50 feet. And when you release it, you will be gagging and burning, but it will also force the bear to have that similar reaction, and hopefully you can get away. But just as a kind of a explanation of what that is, it's something that honestly, whenever I went out west for the first time, I had no idea. Like, hey, where's your bear canister? Or where's your bear spray? What? It's required on this hike. Okay, I don't have any. Can I borrow some? And you can't fly with it. So that's another logistical thing, is if you're flying, you have to make a plan specifically to pick it up from an outdoor store. It's not something you can just go in and buy off a shelf in, say, like a Walmart or anything like that, usually.
I think you can get it at Costco. At least our Costco, you can get it. Yeah, bear spray. Yeah, unfortunately, I do have the added fun of there is video proof on my YouTube channel of me spraying myself with bear spray in a really stupid moment. We were like, hey, let's get some really cool footage of us deploying bear spray. And yeah, the wind blew it right back into my face.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good learning experience. Do not recommend. But yeah, and it's basically, like you said, it's just a high-powered mace, and it has the exact same effect. And it's always interesting because being out here in grizzly country, usually that's the first topic of, oh man, the grizzlies. I have come far more closer to deploying my bear spray on moose than I ever have on grizzlies. In fact, I've only ever seen one grizzly, knock on wood, in this since I moved out here. Incidentally, it is on part of the trail that we'll be going on. And it was a average size, I would say probably an older juvenile. It wasn't super big, but it was probably bigger than a black bear at that point. And we came around a corner and I saw it, and your brain almost doesn't even click right away when you first see it, because at first I was just thinking it was a brown colored black bear, and I instinctively went bear. And as soon as I said that, its head popped up. It took one look at us and noped right into the woods. So it didn't want anything to do with us. It was just a surprise to see us as we were surprised to see it. And it wasn't until it was well gone I went, I think that was a grizzly bear. And so that said, though, I've been charged several times with moose, and those things scare the snot out of me. So
they're giant.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. So the grizzlies obviously are a concern, but we've also got black bears, the mountain lions, moose, marmots. I've had more issues with marmots and porcupines on the trail than the big ones. So one porcupine got a hold of my trekking poles and devoured them, and a marmot I actually caught in the act of chewing on a bear line. So yeah. But yeah, so I think those are probably our biggest, precautions, and just doing things like we're pretty good at doing the Bermuda Triangle, which is, setting up camp, eating 100 feet off in one direction, and then setting your bear cans 100 feet from both of those. So kind of creating a triangle. But yeah, generally speaking, if you follow most of the precautions, and just make smart choices, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and looking at the route, it looks like it's fairly remote for at least a good portion of it. So in theory, hopefully you won't have too many habituated bears in that type of area.
Yeah, there's not a lot. There is the very last segment that we do. Connor and I did that recently, and we came across another set of hikers that were coming the other way, and they're like, hey, yeah, we just had a bear get into our bear can or our bear bag last night. And the guy actually looked at us and goes, yeah, I probably didn't set it up very well.
No.
Connor and I just kind of looked at each other and went,
Yeah,
Yep.
that's why we don't
if
carry
it
them
got
much
there, that's
anymore.
probably. Yeah. So speaking of bear bags, like I haven't had the chance to use one myself. What are your guys' opinions on Ursac? So for those that don't know, it's basically like a Kevlar bag that is supposedly bear resistant. I don't know if you could call it bear proof, but have you guys had experience with those?
Do you want to go with this one first, Connor? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I've never used one myself. I do know a few folks who have, and I do know that they've never had an experience where it has been chewed on by a bear. What I do know about them is it's a 3-part system, and a lot of people don't quite recognize that. You need a scent resistant bag as well as the Ursac, and then it's actually like an aluminum bag that prevents your stuff from being pulverized. It might still be edible, but it's going to end up being more of a porridge or soup when it's not supposed to be, I suppose.
Yeah.
Is that your experience or understanding as well, Kalman?
Yeah. It's a 3-part system, and then there's a special way to rig it. And you have to do all of those things in order for it to get to the level that it was certified by the interagency bear. I can't remember the name for it, because it was certified, and you have to say that, the Ursac is definitely certified. It is not allowed by a lot of the federal agencies because of the fact that there's so many steps involved, and most people don't, I think, realize that. And that's an education thing. And there's lots of different things you can go with that on that. The Ursac itself is going to work. It's going to keep the bear from getting into the food. The problem is that the food may leak out if it's not in a leak resistance. It's called the Opsac or the odor-proof sack that they sell. And so there's just a lot of things that go into it. And, but I think the agencies, they like to have a certain level of control. In fact, you can't even use bear cans in Yellowstone. You have to bear bag, but you have to stay at their campsites that have a pre-approved bar across it. So it's essentially foolproof. But quote like, unquote. Yeah, quote unquote. So, I think the Ursac, it's an option, but, like any other option, it's really important for people to do really good research, and mainly research with the product itself. Speaking as a guy who has a YouTube channel, don't always listen to the people on YouTube. Most of them are probably out there for the right reasons and trying to do the best they can. But, there are people out there with well-intentioned but flawed information. So like I say, I think the Ursac is a good option, as long as it's used correctly. But I think the safest option right now, is the bear canisters. Just unfortunately, they also happen to be the heaviest.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the canisters, I've used those in the past. They're just really simple. You literally put the top on it, make sure it clicks in place, and you're good. Ursac sounds like there could be a lot more failure modes in there, a lot more complex.
I definitely I definitely recommend with bear cans though too. Like, they're not foolproof either. Don't set them someplace next to a drop off or like a body of water, because they can get moved. They're not going to get carried away because they don't have thumbs. But if it gets swatted off of a cliff, you're just as screwed as if the bear got into it. Except the bear's not going to suffer.
True.
And I use an Ursac a lot, but on the East Coast, and it's mostly for rodents. It works really, really well for that. So that's I have one. I use it very regularly because it's lighter. But it's from the perspective of rodents, not necessarily bears. And it gets hung too. I look at it as it's harder to get into that compared to the other bags that are hanging around it. So, opportunity.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, that was a lot of bear talk. I think it was good. But let's get more back on to your guys' route. So, like, we're all kind of looking at the route now, but what are some things you think are going to be the highlights of areas you're going to go through? What parts are you looking forward to the most?
So one of my favorite areas, well, I assume it's going to be my favorite because we've tried to get there twice now and have failed both times due to inclement weather both times. but there's a section called the Lake Plateau. I think it's right around the midpoint as far as distance goes, but it's right in the middle, separates two drainages, and it's just like the name suggests, full of lakes. I'm hoping to bring my fly rod and go up there and fish it, and I'd love to do like a slam where I try and catch every fish species that are available up there, and I think we can do it. But I think just that getting that over that hump of getting to the Lake Plateau when we failed it twice now. Last summer we went during the biggest like watershed weekend of the year, came to a spot where a bridge was out and didn't think that it was quite the safest place to pass. And then 2 years ago, we went up a different way too early in the season and came to a gigantic snowfield, again, unsafe to pass. So we're going late enough in the season. I don't think either of those are going to be an issue this time. But that's probably the spot I'm most looking forward to getting to and through.
The reason why I did it backwards when I created the route was because I knew that I wanted to put my favorite section of the Beartooth Mountains on it, which is this Sundance Pass. Admittedly, I've done the Sundance Pass multiple times, but it is still one of my absolute favorite things, and it's the highest point on this route at 11,000 feet. And I just think it's going to be an amazing experience to crest that hill and, have it be that last major climb of a pretty rough route. And so I can only imagine, getting to that point is probably going to be pretty strong for me in that sense. But the other thing that I'm really looking forward to is I have not done a lot of hiking in the Absaroka range. And so I'm really excited to kind of explore that different range. We did do a fall hike in one of the sections that we're going to be doing, and it was spectacular. And so I can only imagine just how much more, interesting to see some of that mountain range that I haven't experienced before. But there's definitely going to be high points, and there's also going to be no doubt some low points. So there's definitely going to be some type 2 fun on it. But yeah, I would say those are probably the things I'm looking forward to. I will probably also be really looking forward to a shower and a burger in Cook City.
So we haven't used those terms in a while. So type 1 fun is it's fun during the entire experience, right before you do it, while you do it, and after you do it. You're all smiles. Type 2 fun is you might dread it before you start it. You have some fun on the trail, but overall it's work. But whenever you look back on it, you're all smiles, like that was fun, etc. Type 3 fun is the complete opposite of type 1 fun. You just dread it before, during, and after, and you're like, I'll never do that again. So that is the trip rating system that's used by most hikers, etc.
Yeah. And one of the biggest criteria for when I decided to approach Connor with this idea is I knew I needed to bring somebody along who, quite frankly, can put up with my type 2 moments and breakdowns and vice versa. And, both Connor and I have been in those experiences where we've just been like, this just sucks. And fortunately, we know each other, know how to handle each other in those moments. And so, we hope to avoid any full out fist fights during those type 2 moments.
Has this happened before?
Not personally. I've heard stories. But no, and that's the big thing is that I think the secret to success in anything major is 1, knowing that you are going to have those experiences, and 2, knowing that it's okay to have those experiences, and then 3, having people there that can more or less just kind of talk you down from that, especially on a big thing like this, because it would suck to just give up and go home. It might feel good in that moment, but then you're going to look back and you'll be like devastated. It's like I spent 3 years planning this dumb thing. And so Connor is just as equally invested in it. And so, you know, I'm hoping and looking forward to that when I have that moment that Connor can just, you know, smack me in the head and say, cut it out, man. So, you know, you have to be, you know, it's one thing to select your route. You also have to be very selective in who you take along with you on those trips. So
yeah, that kind of makes me think what, and you might have already completely covered it, what you would say to this question, but what do you think makes you two a good hiking duo? Because this is a big thing. Like,
Yeah.
you got to be pretty comfortable with the other person.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think both of us can get along with just about anyone, which is helpful. Like, we're both chill, easygoing. Neither of us necessarily are like, we have to follow plans perfectly. With something like this, you're never going to have things go exactly to plan. And you have to be able to flow with those punches that might come your way. And I think both of us are good at doing that. But just different enough that we make sure the other person is on the straight and narrow, you know. At least that's the way I look at it. What do you think, Kalman?
yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's, you know, there's just certain personalities that do really well, and, you know, they can, like, you know, we can kind of acknowledge when each other is going through that type 2 fun, but knowing that it's not fully blossomed in the type 3 fun, and being able to be supportive without like being antagonistic, if that makes sense. Because I think I've seen a lot of people, like, in the best meaning way, they try to like encourage somebody, but sometimes you just have to let them have their moment. You know, like, for instance, when I was on the Solid Loop Trail and decided to have a meltdown because my tent was wet, because, you know, why not? And I think it was just that moment I was just over it. And, you know, for me, that required throwing a tent on the ground and stomping off in one direction. And instead of going over and trying to be like, it's okay, buddy, you know, it was just kind of like, well, let him have his moment. He'll be fine. And, you know, then you get back to the campsite and they're like, did you get that out of your system? Yeah, I'm good. So, you know, knowing how to approach things or give space when needed. And, you know, the other thing too, is just, you know, like you say, personality meld. And I think both of us recognize that nothing is ever so serious that we can't get past it. And it's just a matter of being, you know, like, being able to laugh shit off and move through and poke fun when we need to and shut up when we need to. And, you know, group dynamic, I think, is one of those things that you can't necessarily predict. You just kind of have to like get through it and find out. You know, there's people out there that I've gone on trips with, I thought were going to be awesome people to go on trips on, and it just turned out to be, you know, a nightmare. And, you know, fortunately, we've been on enough trails together, and, you know, we have not come to blows yet. So I feel like that's a pretty good, this is going to be a test. I'm not going to lie. But, you know, I feel like, you know, doing those kind of things and preparing for things in that way, and kind of thinking about the psychological aspect of something like this is a big part of success that I don't think gets focused on a lot, because it is a lot different than going out for a weekend versus going out for an extended time.
Yeah, there's a lot here. I mean, to go back and kind of recap on things, you know, not just the length and elevation, but also, you know, while you are utilizing trails where possible, there's the weather factor, you know, which can change on a dime at higher altitudes. You can be fine at 6,000 feet, and you go up to 10,000 feet, and you're there an hour too late. And guess what? There's a thunderstorm. And, you know, how you have set points where you need to be at certain times. You know, it's a big undertaking, and keep us posted. Are you planning on doing like a YouTube series on this as you go, like the highlight reel of you two screaming at each other at certain points, and then, you know, sharing some I don't know, mountain house meal? No.
By firelight. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely, there's definitely probably going to be an opportunity for some sort of outtake video where it's just us, cursing at each other or something. Yeah. So, I mean, the goal is, obviously I have a YouTube channel and that's another part of it. And, we want to document, our build up to it and some of the things that we're doing for planning and things that I'm going to focus on that, as well as like conditioning, setting up our gear, setting up our resupplies and how we're going to go through all that. And then, eventually obviously we'll film the video, the trip itself. I probably will put out a series like I normally do, where it's kind of like a series of videos and as it goes along. But the other thing that I really am kind of hoping to do, my other goal with this is I'm toying around with the idea of, for the first time ever, trying to do a full length documentary.
Oh, cool.
And so kind of changing up the way that I film it a little bit. And hopefully we'll get a GoPro, another camera for Hot Pants to have, so that we'll get more than just my perspective of things, and do a little bit more story based kind of thing. We'll see how it works. That's a whole level of hurdles in its own right. And, just like the difference between my backpacking hobby in this particular trip versus my filming hobby in this particular trip is going to be very different. And I don't know what I'm going to do with those things, but, definitely going to be, a lot of videos. So before, during, and after, although we won't be posting while on the trip, because we will most definitely not be in cell phone service. But yeah, so definitely going to be documenting it, because that's part of the fun for me now is doing the videos and stuff. But I figured, just keeping with the theme of breaking through into new territories, I would do the same with YouTube and with video making. So that's the goal. But yeah, we're hoping to just kind of keep going. I think we want to do a couple live Q&As with people on the channel and stuff. And, I've not been as active on my channel lately, just because life is, periodically gets in the way. And despite what it looks like on social media, we do all have, regular lives. And I'm working 6 days a week right now, so it's just hard for me to find time to do videos. But, there will definitely be lots of gear talk preceding it, because that's, what people apparently want to watch, what we're going to be doing, what we're going to be doing different. I'm already getting those kinds of questions. But yeah, there's going to be plenty of opportunities, I think, to follow along with it, if I follow through and actually get off my lazy butt and do it. Because it does take a little bit of work. But yeah, there'll definitely be opportunities to pass along. And, hopefully here we can give Hot Pants a crash course in videography.
Yeah, I'm real interested in getting my own camera and starting to, I don't know if I'll do the full YouTube thing to put it out there for other people, but one of my favorite things about when I go on trips with Kalman and he does make the videos is I can look back and reminisce, and I want to be able to, put my own creative touch on it too. So I'm interested in getting a GoPro or getting a, nicer camera or something like that, and filming it for myself, and then trying to put together a video of my own and see how that goes. So
he secretly just makes fun of the music I put in the videos.
How did we do? Did we cover everything you all wanted to talk about the route and what your plans and everything kind of related to that?
Yeah, I think so. Connor, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
Why do we want to do this?
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. And my thing, I drive by that all the time. I can walk out of my back door and see those mountains. And I want to be able to point to them and say, I've walked the entire length of those. It's simple. It's one of those things that I just think it'd be cool. And, life gets tougher and life goes on. I'm getting married next year, as Kyle can, I don't know about next year, but that planning is, I'm sure, coming your way. And I want to do it while I can and get out. And yeah, I'm just excited.
Yeah, trust me. When you're like, I'm married with 2 kids, and
Mhm.
it's a lot going on. Like
Makes
I
it a
have
little
to
tough.
I have to carve out. If I'm taking a trip, it's like I'm planning it 6 months ahead of time, usually
Yeah.
something like that, and it is on the calendar. Because if I
Yeah.
don't put it on the calendar, something's going to come
It
up.
doesn't
And
exist. Yeah.
yeah, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I have that same kind of idea, you know, it's like, you know, I fall into this big trap of having like really bad imposter syndrome. And like I keep telling myself, like, this isn't that big of a deal. Like, we got invited to apply for a grant through a company. I won't say the name of the company, but a possible grant for some funding for this. And when I was talking to the guy, I was like, yeah, it's not really that big of a deal. And he was like, but it is. He's like, I mean, not many people do that, and it's a new first time, you know,
Yeah.
as far as we can tell that anybody's done this particular route. I'm sure somebody has hiked across these ranges before, but
Some
you know,
trapper back in the late 1800s or something. But
yeah,
They
but
didn't have YouTube, so
yeah,
who knows? How
they couldn't
can you
document it.
tell
Yeah.
if it happened?
Might as well not happen.
if it's not on social media, did it really happen?
Yeah.
True.
Kyle wouldn't know.
Yeah,
No,
Kyle doesn't know.
Sorry. That was low.
it's true.
But you know what? It's just the opportunity to be able to look back and say, you know, not only did I do that, but I did it with a really good friend of mine, and you know, it's just kind of in its own right, it's an epic thing. You know, it's not about competing against other people; it's just about competing against us. And this is gonna be a hard trip. I mean, there's no, I keep wanting to make sure that I don't fall in the pitfall of thinking this is going to be easy, because it's not. And but you know, I know that I can do it. I want to do it, and I want to be able to look back and go, I did that. And who knows? You know, I ultimately I would love to see this become, you know, a more established route. Who knows? Maybe I'll create a book or something to create this route that other people can use. You know, once I get done with it. But yeah, I'm just looking forward for the simple opportunity to be able to look back and say, I rose up to the challenge of a pretty crazy thing and pulled it off. And even if I don't succeed, at least I gave it a shot. But man, when we look back on this, it's going to be glorious. And so, you know, why not? Let's give it a shot. All we can do is, you know, no matter what happens, I think we're always going to look back on it and say that was an awesome experience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that is a perfect place to end it. If we don't have anything else we really want to hit, that was a nice uplifting moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys want to plug into your social media stuff?
Yeah. So yeah, if you're wanting to follow along on the adventure, and you know, hopefully we'll get some good stuff uploaded and stuff here, and talk a little bit about what's going on. But my YouTube channel is Everyday Backpacker, and then the corresponding Instagram account, which is usually just me posting dumb stuff, is everyday_backpacker. If that's not confusing enough. But yeah, so like I said, we will definitely be posting stuff on there, and whatever footage we get of the trip and the build up to it will be there.
Perfect. I'm excited to see it.
Me too.
Well, okay. Well, I think I'm going to bring it on home with all my regular podcast stuff. If you love what you're hearing on the podcast and want to help us out, the best way to do that is give us 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts. That's the best place to do it. The Instagram for our podcast is @MereMortalPod. We also have an email if you want to say, hey, bring Kalman back on every month or something like that. You can email us at adventuringformeremortals@gmail.com. We also have a Discord. It's pretty much a ghost town over there, but if it's your thing, the invite link is in the show notes. My personal Instagram is @Trevor Bowman, 2 L's, 2 N's. Kyle doesn't have his own official social media, but his fiance and I have one that we run for him called @Kyle Doesn't Have Social Media. So if you want to see pictures of the ring he got his fiance Erin, they're on there now, so you should go check it out. It's a pretty ring. But yeah, with that, thanks guys for coming on. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for your guys' trip. I'm really excited to see how it turns out.
Thanks. Yeah, I was excited to come on because you guys' show is one of my favorites, and so
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure getting to talk about it, and I'm looking forward to be able to share more about this trip.
Well, with that, we'll talk to everybody next month. See y'all.
bye.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.